And that's what Buffalo tastes like. What's going on, everybody? This is the Coverbandconfidential podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders to learn how to rock more while also sucking less. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
Just got back from Wyoming, and man, are my elks tired.
Buffalo wings tired.
Yeah. I saw both of those things a lot.
It's good. No moose? No moose?
Nope, not a moose in sight. Dang. Lots of deer, lots of elk, lots of buffalo. And weirdly, lots of crows. Huh. Like crows run Jackson, Wyoming, as far as I can tell.
Interesting.
They're literally everywhere, and they give no Fs whatsoever. And so that's fun.
That's good.
But yeah, we had a blast, man. I mean, that area of the country is gorgeous, and you should go and see it.
For sure. I've never been to Jackson in the winter. Is it hopping?
The last time we had gone, it was like 13, 14 years ago, and it was very much a ghost town. There was nothing going on. It is no longer like that. Mm-hmm. It was pretty crowded. Everything was open. Yeah, it was a very different experience, but not bad, just different.
I think the skiing outlook around there has changed a lot in the last few years.
Yeah, so the big resort out there is Teton Village, which is out a little bit from city center. But in town, there's one called Snow King, and it's pretty solid runs. It's much more affordable, and you don't have to, take a bus or a tram to get out there. And the big issue with Teton Village is that it's so crowded. Like you can wait almost like an hour to get on a lift, where we didn't wait in line once over at Snow King. So
nice.
That was cool. Yeah. And, we did the Yellowstone snowmobile deal, and a bit treacherous. They said it was the worst day they had in the park in 10 years. We were lucky enough to be there.
Yeah.
But man, I love snowmobiling. I am a winter boy.
All right.
Just throw me out in the snow. That is where I belong.
You live in the wrong state.
I really do. I also realize that I don't do enough snow activities because, as you can see on the video, my nose is in this area is a bit redder than the rest of my body.
Well,
didn't quite get the sun protection dialed in on the first day.
Right.
And I don't know if you know this, but snow is very reflective of ultraviolet light.
Totally true.
So how about you?
Pretty quiet. Actually, I have two fairly traumatic things. One is that my family is now one cat fewer. We had a sweet 18-year-old boy who... Yeah, his time came, and unlike other pets where I felt like we hung on too long, we actually feel like we did it while he still was like not miserable for most of the day, and there was enough misery to make it clear it was time. But how that is. The second thing is my new bassist, who I'm liking, texted the group over the weekend and said, "Wow, I just cut my index finger on my right hand, and I'm going to the ER." And it might be the worst cut I've ever had. He's a model RC guy. He flies model airplanes, and it turns out he got caught by a propeller and cut to the bone on his right index finger. He thought it might be broken. Second finger is like bruised and has some cut on it, but really it's the main, your main finger.
Yeah, the one you kind of use.
The finger. So he sent some pictures of it in bandages and offered pre-bandage pictures, which we declined.
Thank you.
But so now we have 4 weeks to our first gig with him, the St. Patrick's gig, and he'll be out of town next week, assuming that's still on. So 3 rehearsals left, assuming he can play with 3 fingers. So we're I figured out.
I've definitely done stupid things and injured my hand where gigs still had to happen.
Yep.
And not to diminish the contributions of bass players, but if you were going to play an instrument and needed to drop a finger or two, bass isn't a bad one.
Not a bad one. No. And he's a good enough and interesting enough player that if I got like 1/4 of his chops for a night, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I could live with 3/4 of his playing.
Well, either way, I hope, speedy recovery.
Yeah, for sure.
Permanent damage and all of that good stuff. Speaking of permanent damage, it's time for reviews. It's the best transition I can think of. This one's from Connor. It says, excellent, informative, and fun podcast. Adam and Dan are excellent podcast hosts of an extremely informative and fun show suitable for cover band members of all levels, providing balanced opinions on a wide array of cover band topics and with an extensive back catalog of prior episodes. These guys are an invaluable resource. Keep up the great work, guys.
We will.
Thanks to Connor
for
the kind words.
Excellent.
If you'd like to be shouted out on the show, leave a review. We'd love to say things and such.
We do like saying things.
Yeah, it is kind of what we are known for in the world.
Yep.
So as far as the topics this week, I've been chasing buffalo and riding steer and stuff all week, so I don't have a lot of music-y things to get into, but we had a very lively conversation pop up on the Patreon Slack, which you should be a member of if you're not already. And it just seemed like the perfect conversation to have for this week.
Yep.
While it's below freezing in Jackson, Wyoming, it's starting to warm up in other places. It's actually almost 65 here today. So it's time to dust off the sets, start looking at spring and summer. And most of all, you got to figure out how you're going to start your show. So this week, we want to talk about the first set.
First set. Yep. And maybe we'll tell the story here. Maybe we'll tell a little bit of the story that arose in the Slack chat.
Tell the story.
Yeah. So one of our patrons, Michael Harris of the band Diamond Avenue, and he's awesome and the band's awesome, big fans. He posted in the Slack that they were going to do a show that included the entirety of the album Dookie by Green Day. Yes. And everyone was very excited about that. As many people, that's a formative kind of album. So he came back post show, and here was this is what he posted to recap. Had a fantastic show on Saturday. Place was jam packed. Venue bumped up our pay without us even asking. Summer show booked before we left. Hell, there was even a mosh pit at one point. Great night overall. Hey. Yeah, winner. The Dookie experiment went over huge. Way better than I was expecting.
The Dookie experiment.
The Dookie experiment. Yeah, that's a band name. You could be a cover. You'd be a Green Day tribute act.
The Dookie experiment.
Way better than I was expecting. Had our biggest crowd of what I would call non-loyal followers yet, and a few of them told us they came just because they saw we were running the album. As a result of running the album, our set was kind of out of whack from what we've been accustomed to lately. Instead of our usual 3-piece first half, 4-piece second half, we mixed it up and opened with the 4-piece. Here's ultimately why I'm typing out this novel and why I'm quoting it.
We're talking about it, yeah.
The 14 or so 4-piece songs we open the show with usually come in the second half of the night and usually go over huge. On Saturday, most were lukewarm at best. It adds to my belief that no matter what songs we start the show off with, the crowd will never be super into it until they get warmed up, resulting in a 30 or so minute stretch of playing to an inactive crowd before things explode. Being fully aware that we need to be the thermostat and not the thermometer, our energy will remain the same on stage, but I'm wondering what can be done to make that opening portion of the show more engaging. Other than, say, an opener, has anybody come up with a solid way to get the crowd into it early and often? And my immediate response was, Adam, we need to talk about this on the podcast. This is a really good question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's true. There's so many different schools of thought. And I was talking with Dan before we started recording. It's like, this is one of those topics that I think I care too much about. And caring doesn't fix anything. It doesn't make me better or worse at actually doing the job.
Right.
It doesn't make the end result any easier to predict. There's still so many mitigating factors into what goes into a first set and how to structure it appropriately. And I think, again, we talk about setlist design like it's a dark art. We don't really know the secrets behind it, and it is evasive and mysterious. But there are certain things that do work for the most part.
Yeah.
And the thing about the album tribute is that it doesn't take into account any of the things that live performers do. The energy that the flow of an album takes doesn't always line up with what you would want out of a live set.
Yeah, I'd say it doesn't at all. By design, they're doing different things.
So here's a good example of that. Def Leppard have done multiple residencies and tours where they did the Hysteria album all the way through, cover to cover.
Right.
But think about that. When you go to do Hysteria in order, do you know what the 5th song in your set is?
You have to remind
Take
me.
a wild guess.
I don't have it.
It's Pour Some Sugar on Me.
Okay.
5 songs
5
into
songs
the night.
in. That's too early for that one.
And you're ending on a couple of tunes that aren't necessarily super, super well known.
Yeah.
The same goes for Thriller. We've done a Thriller tribute, and people think they want to hear Thriller cover to cover, but they don't.
They don't.
Because there's a couple of tunes in there that are great songs, but people don't know them as much as the other ones. Baby Be Mine, the second song after starting with Wanna Be Starting Something, and then you do Thriller and Beat It, and then you play The Lady in My Life, which is just like this R&B slow jam that is basically just there so that they can fade it out and the album is over.
Well, yeah, but then you also got the Paul McCartney duets to deal with, right?
Girl Is Mine.
Girl Is Mine.
But I mean, but that's like 3 songs in. That's like the 3rd song.
Yeah.
Now I got to look that up. Yeah, Girl Is Mine, track 3.
Track 3. Doggone Girl Is Mine.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, so setting that aside, I think the idea of playing an album all the way through when it's an iconic piece of work, and clearly, as we've demonstrated here, as Michael showed us, it's a great marketing move, and for the right album, with the right 100%. Album, it's a winner, right? But it leaves us this question: what do I do with my first set? And is there a way to see? I've always felt like the first set, you want to come out strong, big energy, and then pull it back because you need to save your big bangers for the second set, or however you break your night up later in the night anyway.
Right.
So first set is full of, we call them thinkers.
Yeah.
Is there a way to get high energy in the first set at a bar or club context? I don't know. I think some ideas did come up in the Slack. You had one, which was one of those cash guns.
Yeah. So this was, I don't know if I invented this idea. It doesn't really matter. But the idea is to figure out a way to turn the room on its ear instantly.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that is what it would take to start a show at the level that you would typically end your first set.
Just a cloud of money.
And so you need to do something drastic.
Yeah.
You either have to be the most compelling entertainer on the planet that can just literally wrap a room around their finger like instantly, like a David Lee Roth or something like that. Or you could do what I thought of, which is go to the bank and get $50 in singles and get one of those battery operated cash guns.
Yeah.
And just say, hey, we're about to start. If you want to, we're giving out $50. Let's just start shooting as you start the first song. And guaranteed, you're going to have a bunch of people right in front of the stage. Whether they stick around, I can't necessarily,
Yeah.
Unless you tell them that you're going to send another $50 out sometime during the first set, but you don't know when.
That's right.
So you're out $100, but maybe you have the audience from the jump.
There are shows where it's worth saving the audience, worth $100 to get that audience that early. I could see that paying off.
Not sure. Is it legal? I know certain things you can't do in bars. You probably couldn't advertise that.
No, you probably couldn't advertise that. You wouldn't want to.
Yeah, I don't know. Coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. Is this legal and or ethical?
Yeah. Alternately, do you put all your big bangers up front? Listen, I save Mr. Brightside for second to last, third to last, something like that. You save Don't Stop Believin' for the very end.
Yep.
Would you move those to set one to try to goose energy early in the show?
Potentially. I think it depends. Again, context matters. If you're doing a municipal set, the first set is the last set.
For sure. No, context is everything in this. For sure.
You have to build it a certain way.
We're talking about a bar and club date. Yeah. I mean, a wedding is going to come out strong. You're going to play your 45 minutes and that's it, right? So,
right.
Totally different.
I guess the answer to that is, what do you have to top it?
That's the thing. If you feel like you got to build the energy up through the end of the show, then you are complicit maybe in the first set being low, right?
Yeah. And giving people an opportunity to kind of work their way into it. And we've talked about this a couple of different times when we're talking about set list structure and that kind of thing. There is such thing as a first set song and a second set song. What those things are, I couldn't tell you. I just know that they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
for me, Africa can be a first set song. I mean, it's a tent pole. But energy's kind of meh. You're not going to get that.
People sing along.
They will. I can only speak on my wheelhouse. But with Warped, we can kind of come in at a pretty high level because everything's at a high level.
Right.
So we would normally start with Basket Case by Green Day.
Okay.
Because the opening is, do you have the time to listen to me whine? Because you're about to do that for the next hour and a half.
Yep.
So in that context, you can come out with something pretty high energy. I think it really depends on what the crowd's looking for and the kind of event. But in my world, we have a lot of these mid-tempo songs that are great to open the show with. And it's different for every band. In one band, we used to open with Hello There, Ladies and Gentlemen by Cheap Trick. That's a good kind of introductory.
Yep.
Because hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Are you ready to rock? Are you ready or not? That's kind of a cool idea. Another band we used to open with Rebel, David Bowie.
Okay.
Again, mid-tempo, but like energy. A song that gets people's attention.
Yep.
It's got a thing to it. So there's a lot of techniques and theories about what would make a good opener, but typically it needs to be at a particular level that you can set the tone of the evening. Now you may go above that energy level, but you would probably very rarely go below that energy level unless you were trying to do something very intentional for the opener. So if you're talking about, we're talking about thermostats and thermometers, whatever, I would call the opener the room temperature, like just the base level, because that's setting the tone for the evening.
Yeah.
And it can, and again, it depends on where you're going. What are you ending with? What are you wrapping up with? What is the purpose of the event?
Yep.
Club and a venue, you want to get to like the bangers at the end, so you're going to have your Pour Some Sugar on Me's and your Living on a Prayers and your Don't Stop Believins or Mr. Brightside or, whatever that is.
Everybody
for
talks. I do a mashup now. I do a mashup of Brightside and Everybody Talks now. That is a killer.
I have got to say, talking about songs and shout outs and stuff, I have this one I'm shocked I'd never thought of it before, but Artie from the Max up in New York, he was like, I think we're going to do a mashup of Something Happened on the Way to Heaven by Phil Collins and King of Wishful Thinking by Go West. And I was like, God, that would be so rad because I love both of those songs so much.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, the main question was, where does it go?
Right.
And the consensus was, it's a first set deal.
No, it's a thinker. It's clearly a thinker, especially if you mash it up in some clever way that's like, first set tune.
It definitely took a second to like do the math on Something Happened on the Way to Heaven, because that line is actually in the beginning of the second verse.
Right.
It's not in the chorus. Right. So I did have to look at it. I was like, oh yeah, I love that song.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can run and you can hide. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yep.
But yeah, the idea of like doing like King of Wishful Thinking, again, mid-tempo, everybody knows the song, but it's not going to be one of those things that like the crowd's going to rush up and join you. But what is the new Strange typically open with?
Well, we mostly lately been opening with Don't You Forget About Me, Simple Minds.
It's a good one.
Which, it's pretty strong. And, you do that first two chords and literally the whole room goes, hey, 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 hey. It gets everybody right from the start. But then we do pull it back. Often number 2 is Lovely Day, Bill Withers. Yeah. Which we goose the tempo on some, fair amount actually. Yeah. But I like that one because it's a good vocal warm up for me. If I'm not warmed up by the end of singing those like super long notes, like I'm breathing deep and feeling good.
Can you do like 2 full choruses on that?
I can. Yeah.
That's the one, because we used to do that in the yacht rock bands, and the idea was, could you hold it longer than Bill Withers could? Right. And I feel like I spent the entire song starting to like tuck away some air.
Yeah.
Just get, yep. 100%. Yeah. Just so you can just do that last one and not like start diving.
Yes. Yeah. Most of the time I can do it all the way around twice. And when I can't, I'm like, oh God, tonight's going to suck. Damn. Oh my God.
Yeah. It is a good barometer there.
Yeah. Yeah. But then we're into some more thinky, mid-tempo-y, everybody wants to rule the world-y sort of stuff. But that doesn't mean that our first set is without texture. You recall my W strategy around setlist design. So it does build to a mid-tempo, a mid-set peak, and then sort of back off and then end strong in the first set. Can't bring to mind exactly what we do for that these days, but that is the shape of it. So it's true, though, that the first set is, no matter what shape I build it in or what songs I choose to put in it, is not as well engaged with by the crowd as the second set. And so maybe the thing is just not to fight that. Maybe the thing is to lean into it, choose the songs that work for that, experience.
Yeah.
The conversation on Slack was like, how do we fight it? How do we fix it? Maybe it's not a problem. Maybe it's not something to fix.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of validity to that conversation, because the intent of what entertainers do is to take people on a journey and maybe meet them where they're at. And it also kind of depends on how much time you've got. If you're an original group and you've got 45 minutes, you don't have enough time to talk like that. You need to come out swinging.
Yep.
Because you've only got this tight window. Whereas bands like us, we're playing 2, 3, 4 hours a night.
Yeah.
You've got the ability to kind of to ride away.
In fact, it better. If you're at the same energy level the whole way across, it's going to be miserable, actually.
Yeah, I think everybody would end up being exhausted.
Yeah.
Especially you.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, it is kind of nice to kind of work your way into the evening, and you can either meet the audience where they're at or you can take them somewhere.
Yep.
In order for you to take them somewhere, they've got to be willing to do it. And sometimes you don't have any say over whether that is the case.
Yeah, no matter how much you're
it is better
thermostat, there's no, yeah.
But again, being the thermostat isn't necessarily just being wishy-washy. It also doesn't mean that you have to come in and like crank the heat up right away. Here's an idea. Think of thermostat more like the controller on a burner, and you're boiling a frog. So maybe, you start the temperature at a certain level where maybe they don't notice it a bit.
Say that again. Say it again.
So the idea is like maybe instead of being the thermostat like the air conditioner in the room, you are the thermostat for the burner on the stove while the frog is in the pot, you know?
Yeah. I just really like boiling a frog. That was...
Isn't that the phrase? Like, you know,
no, it completely is. I just really enjoyed the way you said it. I nothing was wrong with the recording. I wasn't backing you up to have another take. I just wanted to hear.
You just wanted to hear me say something ridiculous again.
Fantastic.
But yeah, you start the temperature and they don't even know. Right. And the next thing they know, they're dead.
I've been bought alive.
That's great.
Oh.
I know everybody tuned in to figure out, how do I murder my audience? I'm sure Adam and Dan will know.
Boil them like frogs.
Boil them alive. That's what you do.
Oh.
So yeah, I think there's a no-win situation for the album tribute. I think an opener is really the only way to do it. And there's a lot of creative ways of doing that. Like the opener could still be you.
Yep.
But maybe you hold Dookie off. You keep the Dookie to yourself until it's time to unleash the Dookie on the audience. Get the audience good and warmed up before you drop the Dookie.
Look, they came for the Dookie, so...
They came for it, but maybe they're not ready for it right away.
That's right. This
episode is going great.
Yeah. Listen, there was one really cool suggestion on the Slack, though, that I really liked a lot, and that was a pre-program of playlist music playing up until a downbeat that starts to set the tone, starts to set the energy. Something that Mike suggested. And then Kevin Sambat from band Uncle Jesse said there's a band he's aware of that has intro music, preset music that is thematic. So they're an 80s band. It's full of like catchphrases and clips from shows and movies and commercials, and like really sets the tone, really sets the mood. And I think that's a genius idea. I will admit I started playing around building something similar. So I think that's great. I'm real interested to see what that might do in terms of what energy's in the room for you to walk into to play downbeat to.
Yeah, because like we've always had like a house music mix, but it never really occurred to me to do it in a way where you're turning the burner on
this is your
before
opener.
you ever hit the stage.
Yeah,
and that's a really interesting concept. I feel like there's a lot of creative ways of doing this. So like we had mentioned, doing an opening set, and I've seen it go so far as a band opening up for themselves, totally different look, totally different
brand
vibe. Yeah, so a really cool example of that, again, I'm only in the 80s because it's literally all I know. There is a Cure tribute called Love Song, and they've got a new wave band that opens up, and it's the same guys. Mm-hmm. The most impressive thing, though, is that the Robert Smith guy goes backstage in between sets and becomes Robert Smith.
Wow.
So he's got to take his glasses and his hat off, and he's got to like start putting all of this out and doing the lipstick, and then he comes out and he's just, and it's like a switch is flipped and he's a totally different character.
It's awesome,
which is pretty neat. It's a cool idea.
Yeah,
but yeah, you could do a video playlist that is, again, kind of contributes to the vibe of the evening. And yeah, for a 90s night, it would be really fun to see like old TV commercials and pop culture stuff. I thought that would be really fun.
Yeah,
to kind of dial in. So it's definitely given me a lot to think about. Some actionable things. And, it really did make me realize that, like, I don't know, I think we've done some of these gigs so long that it feels like we don't really have to think about it. But I feel like putting a little intention behind it and like really digging into what the flow of a show should be and adding different elements that are a bit more intentional and scheduled and spaced out would definitely, it's something we really need to consider. We've got a lot of these municipal events coming up, and it's like, go and do the work, make this not necessarily theatrical, but like put some effort behind it, put some intention into the structuring and making things more seamless and keeping the show flowing. I think that's something we should definitely be working on.
Yeah. I'm doing a ton of thinking like that around the 80s brand that I'm working on.
Yep.
How to make
There's a lot.
Yeah. And I am thinking theatrically. I'm thinking, in terms of building backing tracks that don't require me on guitar.
Yep.
So that I can run around stage more and be goofy and all that.
Well, I just got myself I'm now the third guitar player. So
sweet.
In my world, I basically can choose whether I play or not.
Cool.
And if I am playing, I can just do big, dumb caveman guitar where I don't have to think about it at all.
Yeah.
Which would be way more fun for me, for sure. So
yeah, that's good.
Well, I hope that this was, if nothing else, an interesting thought experiment. I feel like everybody's got their thing. Coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. Email us the song that you open your shows with typically. I want every single person listening to this episode, our inbox should be an absolute disaster by first of next week. I want to know what everybody opens their first set with. Email us and let us know.
Also,
it'll be fun.
Inbox disaster, band name, called it.
Okay. I feel like that's what's the second or third one this episode.
At least.
The Dookie experiment. That was the other.
Boiling frog.
Boiling frogs. Frog bowlers.
Frog boiling.
Anyway. Well, guys, I think that's a good one to wrap it up on. The wheels came off there for a bit, but we got it back on track.
Yep.
Because that's what we do. We're professionals. If you would like to support the show, you can do it in a number of ways, but I'll go ahead and let Mike tell you what those are. But primarily, spoiler alert, it's Patreon. Either way, in Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
You have been listening to the Coverband Confidential podcast for the week of February 23rd, 2024.